Hey guys, Corbin here, and today let's build a slab leveling jig. Let's do it using the super kick-ass Offerman leveling jig from Fine Woodworking and Nick Offerman. I have a bunch of these big oak slabs that I need to have be level, and I have an awesome router, and so let's build a router slab leveling jig. Let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing I did was grab my router base, and I had to measure the width of it so we could create a piece of melamine that was just wide enough to fit this, plus an extra 3/4 of an inch on each side for the side rails of the piece. I actually ended up making this piece twice because at first I ripped it to the exact width, which wasn't what I wanted, and I realized my mistake later and remade it. But so it goes. Okay, so this is a piece of 3/4 inch melamine, and I am going to just go ahead and cross cut it using my special foot clamp technique, and this just makes it more easy for me to work with on the table saw. Then I rip it to that width I just previously talked about, and again I'm making a mistake and not ripping it wide enough here, and I later realize my error and fix it. So this part of the jig needs a hole for the router bit to fit through. So I just mark it out in the center and drag my pencil along my ruler to find out where it needs to be. So I clamp the piece of melamine down and I cut a few holes so I can use the jigsaw to cut the ending curve around this guy. And then the rest I'm going to complete in the table saw. So to do these cuts I have to do a blind cut, which means removing my table saw's guard and splitter and marking where I need to start and stop from the blade. And once I mark it on the edge of my guard there, I can just rip, start, stop, wait for it, flip it over, do the other side, and now I have two very parallel exact pieces that I can finish off with the jigsaw. The next step was to rip a bunch of pieces of 3/4 inch birch plywood so I could make the sides and little boxes to support the whole jig in itself. I drilled a few holes in the side pieces so that I could insert the screws and lock nuts into them. The boxes need slots to allow adjustability, and so this is probably easiest to do on a router table, and so I just use a spiral upcutting bit to cut the slots out. Assembly of the end support boxes and the sides to the base is easiest with a pocket hole. So here I'm using a Kreg jig to drill them out, and once all the holes were drilled out, I toss a little glue on the pieces and screw them together with some coarse thread pocket hole screws. It's worth noting when gluing and screwing the second side on, you want to make sure that the router doesn't bind inside of it. So I would use that as a judge to see if it was too tight or not and adjust it as needed. The end boxes were assembled in a similar manner, and it was pretty quick and easy to do with the jig. The only note of interest is the bottom hangs over on the edge to prevent it from sliding off the rails. Alright, let me talk about how to actually use this jig. So first of all, router, big fat bit, and the first thing to do is you have to have some support rails. So what I did is I attached the support rails to whatever surface I want, and I leveled them in this direction. I leveled each one. They only need to be leveled this way and not with respect to each other, because this jig, each side can raise independently from each other, so you can actually level this portion separate from the other ones, and that will ensure everything is correctly flat. So after I got these guys on, I have my bolts and I drop this guy on and adjust it up and down so it's level in all four directions, this way and this way. I placed the board underneath. Actually, I did that first and kind of made sure this is above it. And I tried to shim it to be as level as I could underneath it. And once it's level as I could get it, then I could actually start cutting it. And so the rest of it's pretty darn simple. I just drop the router bit into it, or drop the router down onto it, do a pass, push it, another pass, push it, another pass. The weight of it seems to be fine, and I don't actually need to clamp it down or even clamp stops over here. There's some lips on the end to prevent these from actually sliding off. And the router, you have to drop the speed, running a bit this big. That's really the basics. So this is my first try at leveling something. The piece is really thin and really warped, so I was surprised I could actually get it as flat and nice as I could. So have a good time leveling some big slabs. I'm looking forward to doing it myself.